Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the holographic message floating above her desk. The blue light cast strange shadows across her tired face as she read the words for the fifth time. Each reading made the situation feel more real and more terrifying. The message came from the Universal Council, the group of 12 alien races that controlled most of the known galaxy. For thousands of years, these ancient civilizations had kept peace through their massive fleets and advanced technology. Now they wanted to talk to humanity. Elena pushed her gray hair back and sighed. As Earth's chief science advisor, she had hoped this day would never come. Humanity had only made contact with alien life 50 years ago. Since then, they had tried to stay quiet and avoid attention. It seemed that plan had failed. The office door chimed, and General Robert Hayes walked in. His military uniform was crisp, but his face showed the same worry Elena felt. Behind him came President Maria Santos, looking calm but alert. "Have you finished reading it?" President Santos asked as she sat down. Elena nodded. 3 times. "The message is clear. The Universal Council wants us to stop expanding beyond our solar system. They want us to accept something called protective custody status," General Hayes snorted. "Protective custody? That's a fancy way of saying they want to make us their slaves." The hologram flickered as Elena replayed the message. A tall, reptilian creature appeared in the blue light. Its voice was cold and mechanical through the translation device. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am High Commander Zek Thor of the Galactic Hegemony, speaking for the Universal Council. Your species has been expanding too quickly into space. This expansion threatens the peace we have maintained for 3,000 years." The alien paused, its dark eyes seeming to look directly at them through the recording. "You will cease all military activities beyond your home system. You will accept protective custody status under Council authority. This means you will be allowed to exist, but only under our guidance and control. You have 30 standard days to comply." The message continued with technical details about surrender procedures and the fleet positions. Elena had memorized every word. President Santos leaned forward. "What do we know about their military strength?" General Hayes activated his tablet. "Intelligence reports show they have over 200 massive ships positioned at the edge of our solar system. Each one is 3 times larger than our biggest warship. They use plasma weapons that could destroy entire cities with one shot." Elena stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of Geneva spreading across the valley. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere, alien ships waited to destroy everything humanity had built. "Their technology is impressive," Elena said. "Antimatter reactors, faster than light travel, energy shields that can stop nuclear weapons. They've had thousands of years to perfect these systems." "But," President Santos heard something in Elena's voice. Elena turned back to face them. "But they think like every other species in the galaxy. They focus on energy manipulation. Bigger weapons, stronger shields. They see the universe as something to overpower with brute force." General Hayes frowned. "And humans see it differently?" "We see it as something to understand," Elena replied. "While they were building bigger guns, we were asking different questions. Questions about the 95% of the universe they can't even detect." The president raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about the Dark Matter Project?" Elena nodded. "Project Phantom. It's been classified above your level until now, but I think it's time you knew." She walked back to her desk and entered a long security code. New holograms appeared showing technical drawings and test results that looked impossible. "For the past 20 years, our best scientists have been working on something the Council species never even considered," Elena explained. "They see empty space and think it's actually empty. We know better." The hologram showed a map of the galaxy with invisible currents flowing through it like rivers. Dark matter makes up most of the universe, but it doesn't interact with normal. Matter in ways other species can detect. They can't see it, touch it, or use it. But we found a way. General Hayes studied the images. How? Human stubbornness. Elena smiled for the first time that day. Every other species accepted that dark matter was untouchable. We decided that was unacceptable. If it exists, there must be a way to use it. She changed the hologram to show a sleek black ship unlike anything in human or alien fleets. We call them Phantom-class vessels. They're smaller than traditional warships, but they can do things the Council can't imagine. They can become invisible to any sensor. They can travel through solid matter. They can manipulate gravity itself as a weapon. President Santos leaned back in her chair. How many do we have? 12 operational ships. More in construction. General Hayes looked skeptical. 12 ships against 200? Elena, I know you're brilliant, but the math doesn't work. Elena changed the hologram again. This time it showed a simulation of a space battle. The Council ships fired massive plasma beams at targets that simply weren't there anymore. Then those targets reappeared inside the enemy formation, and ships began imploding as gravity crushed them. Traditional space combat assumes both sides exist in the same dimension, Elena explained. Our ships can phase in and out of normal space-time. Imagine trying to fight an enemy that can walk through walls and make you disappear by touching you. The room fell silent as they watched the simulation. The Council's superior numbers meant nothing when their weapons couldn't hit targets that existed partially outside reality. President Santos finally spoke. Who commands this fleet? Admiral Sarah Chen oversees the entire program. Captain Marcus Torres commands the flagship, the UES Poltergeist. Both are completely loyal and understand what's at stake. General Hayes was still staring at the hologram. Why wasn't I told about this? Because we hoped we'd never need it, Elena replied. The original plan was to develop the technology quietly and use it for exploration and research. We never wanted a war with the Council. But now we might have one, President Santos said. Elena nodded. The Council sees us as primitive children, playing with toys we don't understand. They expect us to surrender because every other species has surrendered when faced with their fleet. She turned off the hologram and faced her leaders directly. They don't understand that humans are different. We don't accept limitations just because someone tells us they exist. We don't surrender just because the enemy looks stronger. And we certainly don't give up our freedom to buy temporary safety. President Santos stood up. What do you recommend? We show them what happens when they underestimate humanity, Elena said. We demonstrate that their ancient technology and overwhelming numbers mean nothing against human innovation. General Hayes looked worried. And if we're wrong? If their ships can somehow counter our dark matter technology? Elena looked out the window again at the lights of human civilization. Somewhere among those lights, children were learning to read. Scientists were making discoveries, and artists were creating beauty. All of it would be lost if humanity accepted slavery to the Council. Then we'll have died as free humans, instead of living as alien pets, she said quietly. But I don't think we're wrong. I think the Council is about to learn why humans have survived and thrived on a dangerous planet at the edge of nowhere. President Santos made her decision. Contact Admiral Chen. Tell her to prepare the Phantom Fleet for Operation Freedom. Elena smiled grimly. Already done. Our ships are moving into position as we speak. The meeting ended, but Elena stayed at her window, watching the stars. Soon, those stars would witness something new. For the first time in galactic history, a young species would refuse to bow to ancient power. The universe was about to discover what happened when humanity said no. Admiral Sarah Chen floated in the zero-gravity observation deck of asteroid base Prometheus. Through the reinforced windows, she watched humanity's greatest secret take shape in the darkness of space. The UES Poltergeist hung motionless against the star field, its black hull absorbing light like a hungry void. Sarah had dedicated the last 15 years of her life to this moment. The Dark Matter Naval Initiative had consumed her career, her personal life, and nearly her sanity. But as she watched the sleek warship's final systems come online, she knew every sacrifice had been worth it. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Park, from the communications station. "Captain Torres is requesting permission to begin final tests." Sarah activated her comm unit. "Permission granted, Marcus. Show me what she can do." The poltergeist began to change. Its solid black surface shimmered, like oil on water, then slowly faded from view. Sarah's enhanced sensors could barely detect a faint gravitational disturbance where the massive ship had been moments before. "Phase shift complete," came Torres's voice through the speakers. "We're currently existing in a parallel dimensional layer. All Council sensors would read this space as completely empty." Sarah smiled. After decades of research, human scientists had learned to manipulate the fundamental structure of space-time itself. While other species built bigger guns, humanity had learned to step outside reality and rewrite the rules of physics. "Bring her back, Marcus. We have work to do." The poltergeist shimmered back into normal space. Sarah pushed off the window and floated toward the command center, her magnetic boots clicking onto the metal deck as artificial gravity took hold. The command center buzzed with activity. Dozens of technicians monitored screens showing data that would have been considered impossible by Council science. Dark matter detectors tracked invisible currents flowing through space. Gravitational sensors mapped the hidden architecture of the universe. "Status report," Sarah called out. Commander Lisa Wong, Sarah's second in command, approached with a tablet. "All 12 Phantom ships are operational. The poltergeist leads Alpha Squadron with 3 other vessels, Beta and Gamma. Squadrons are positioned at coordinates Delta 7 and Theta 9. Sarah studied the tactical display. Red dots showed the positions of Council ships at the edge of the solar system. They formed a perfect blockade, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that 12 human ships had already passed through their formation without being detected. "Crew status? All personnel are ready for deployment. Captain Torres has requested to speak with you about final battle preparations." Sarah nodded. Marcus Torres was her best captain, a brilliant tactical mind who understood dark matter combat better than anyone. If anyone could make this insane plan work, it was him. She made her way to the secure communications booth and activated the quantum link to the poltergeist. Torres's face appeared on the screen, his expression serious but determined. "Admiral, my crew is ready, but I want to make sure we're all clear on what we're about to do." "Speak freely, Marcus." Torres ran a hand through his dark hair. "We're about to attack a fleet that has kept peace in the galaxy for 3,000 years. Ships built by civilizations that mastered space travel before humans learned to make fire. Are we absolutely certain our technology will work against them?" Sarah understood his concern. Everything they knew about dark matter combat came from computer simulations and tests against human-built targets. They had never faced weapons designed by alien minds with centuries of experience. "Marcus, do you remember the first time we tested the phase drive?" He smiled slightly. "Every scientist on the project said it was impossible. Matter can't exist in 2 dimensions simultaneously." "And what happened?" "We proved them wrong. The ship phased perfectly." Sarah leaned forward. "Every breakthrough humanity has ever made started with someone saying it was impossible. The Council species stopped pushing boundaries thousands of years ago. They became comfortable with their power and stopped innovating." The screen flickered as Torres considered her words. "Humans never stopped innovating," Sarah continued. "We never accepted that something couldn't be done just because no one had done it before. That's why we're here, floating in a secret base, preparing to fight gods with technology they can't even comprehend." Torres nodded slowly. "You're right, but Admiral, what if we lose? What if this technology isn't enough?" Sarah looked through the booth's window at the poltergeist. The ship was beautiful in its deadly simplicity. No massive guns or thick armor plates, just sleek lines and the power to rewrite reality. Then we'll have given humanity a fighting chance, she said. But I don't think we'll lose, Marcus. I think the Council is about to learn that ruling through fear only works until someone stops being afraid. She closed the communication link and returned to the command center. The tactical display showed Council ships maintaining their positions, waiting for humanity's surrender. They had no idea that death was already moving among them, invisible and patient. Commander Wong, signal all Phantom vessels. Begin final approach to demonstration coordinates. The coordinates had been carefully chosen. Empty space near Jupiter, far enough from Earth to avoid collateral damage, but close enough for the Council's sensors to record everything that happened. Sarah watched her ships move on the display. They traveled through dark matter currents like submarines through ocean depths, completely invisible to conventional detection. The Council's advanced sensors showed nothing but empty space. "Admiral," called Technician Reeves from the sensor station. "Council fleet is responding to our message. Ambassador Zekthor's flagship is moving toward the demonstration area." Sarah had met Zekthor during the initial contact protocols 5 years ago. The hegemony commander was arrogant, dismissive, and absolutely convinced of his species' superiority. Perfect for what humanity needed to accomplish. How long until the demonstration begins? 47 minutes until the Council fleet reaches the coordinates. Sarah activated the base-wide communication system. "All personnel, this is Admiral Chen. In less than 1 hour, we will show the galaxy that humanity refuses to kneel. Today, we prove that innovation beats intimidation. Today, we show them what happens when humans get angry." The command center erupted in cheers. These people had worked in secret for decades, believing in a dream that most would have called impossible. Now they would see if their faith had been justified. Sarah returned to the observation deck and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, Captain Torres and his crew were preparing to make history. The UES Poltergeist and her sister ships carried the hopes of every human who had ever looked up at the night sky and refused to accept limitations. The Council thought they were dealing with primitive children. They expected humanity to surrender, like every other species had surrendered when faced with superior force. They were about to learn that humans were different. Humans didn't surrender. They adapted, they innovated, and they fought back with weapons their enemies couldn't imagine. Sarah smiled as she watched the stars. The demonstration would begin soon, and the galaxy would never be the same. Ambassador Zekthor stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, dozens of hegemony officers monitored their stations with calm efficiency. The massive dreadnought was 3 kilometers long and packed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. To Zekthor, it represented everything the Council had achieved through superior breeding, ancient wisdom, and technological mastery. The human delegation had requested a demonstration of their military capabilities. Zekthor found the request amusing. What could these primitive apes possibly show that would impress beings who had mastered the galaxy for millennia? "Admiral Thexara," Zekthor called to his tactical officer. "What do our sensors detect at the demonstration coordinates?" The blue-skinned Zenturi checked her displays. "Nothing, Ambassador. Empty space, background radiation, and trace amounts of cosmic dust. The humans appear to have provided coordinates to nothing." Zekthor's reptilian mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Perhaps they hope to demonstrate their surrender. Or maybe they simply don't understand how space coordinates work. Laughter rippled through the bridge crew. The idea that humans could threaten the Council was beyond ridiculous. These creatures had barely learned to leave their own planet 50 years ago. The Council had been traveling between stars when human ancestors were still throwing rocks at wild animals. "Sir," called Communications Officer Veltar from across the bridge, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "Display it," Zekthor ordered. President Santos appeared on the main screen, standing in what looked like a simple office. Zekthor noted the lack of impressive decorations or symbols of power. These humans really didn't understand how to project authority. Ambassador Zekthor, President Santos began, thank you for accepting our invitation to observe this demonstration. We hope it will help clarify humanity's position regarding your surrender demands. Zekthor activated his reply transmitter. President Santos, the Council appreciates your cooperation. We assume you are prepared to discuss the terms of your protective custody status. Actually, Santos replied, we're here to decline your offer and present a counter-proposal. The bridge fell silent. Even the most junior officers stopped there, worked to stare at the screen. No species had ever declined council protection. The very idea was unthinkable. You decline? Zekthor's voice carried a dangerous edge. Perhaps you don't understand the situation. Our fleet could turn your planet into molten rock within hours. Santos remained calm. We understand your capabilities perfectly, Ambassador. We also understand our own. The demonstration will begin in 30 seconds. The transmission ended. Zekthor stared at the blank screen, his mind struggling to process what he had heard. Did these humans actually believe they could threaten the Council? All ships, maximum alert status, he ordered. Deploy sensor sweeps. I want to know what these creatures are planning. Admiral Thex Ara worked her controls frantically. Sir, sensors show nothing. No ships, no weapons, no energy signatures. Whatever they're planning, our equipment can't detect it. Impossible. Increase sweep intensity. Already at maximum, sir. According to our instruments, this region of space is completely empty except for our own vessels. Zekthor felt the first stirring of unease. The Council's sensor technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. If their equipment detected nothing, then nothing was there. But humans had specifically chosen these coordinates for their demonstration. Time to demonstration? 15 seconds, sir. Zekthor watched the tactical display. 23 Council. Dreadnoughts hung in perfect formation, their weapons powered and ready. Whatever trick the humans were planning, it would fail against Council might. 5 seconds, Admiral Thexara called out. The bridge crew watched their screens intently. Several officers checked their weapon systems twice, confirming that everything was ready for whatever primitive display the humans might attempt. Time, Thexara announced. Nothing happened. Zekthor waited for several moments, then activated his communications array. President Santos, your demonstration appears to have failed. Perhaps you would like to reconsider our generous offer? Before Santos could reply, Lieutenant Kexavol at the sensor station made a sound Zekthor had never heard before. It was the sound of absolute terror. Sir, Kexavol whispered, something just appeared inside our formation. Every head on the bridge turned toward the tactical display. Where moments before had shown empty space between their ships, now 3 new contacts appeared. They were smaller than Council dreadnoughts, but their energy signatures were completely unknown. How did they get there? Zekthor demanded. Our sensors showed nothing. I don't know, sir. They just materialized, like they stepped out of empty space. Admiral Thexara was working her controls frantically. Sir, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around those contacts. The gravity readings don't make sense. It's like space-time itself is bending around them. Zekthor stared at the impossible ships on his screen. Open fire! Destroy them immediately! Weapons firing, Thexara confirmed. The Eternal Dominion's main plasma cannons erupted in brilliant blue streams of energy. Each blast carried enough power to vaporize a small asteroid. The beams reached their targets and passed straight through them as if the ships weren't there. Direct hits, no effect, Thexara reported, her voice shaking. The plasma beams went right through their hulls. Sir, I don't understand what I'm seeing. Fire again! More plasma streams lanced across space. Again, they passed harmlessly through the human ships. On the tactical display, the mysterious vessels began to move. They didn't accelerate gradually like normal ships. They simply changed. Position instantly, appearing in new locations without traveling through the space between. "Sir," Kexvol called out, "the righteous fury is reporting the same thing. Their weapons are having no effect." Zekthor felt something he hadn't experienced. In centuries, fear. These human ships were doing things that violated every law of physics the Council understood. They existed and didn't exist simultaneously. They could be targeted, but not hit. "Admiral Thexara, what are those gravitational readings showing now?" "Sir, gravity around the lead human ship is increasing exponentially. The distortion is affecting space-time in a sphere roughly 2 kilometers in diameter." "Effect on our ships?" "The glorious victory is caught in the edge of the field. They're reporting structural stress warnings." On the tactical display, one of the Council dreadnoughts began to change shape. Its massive hull was being compressed by forces no ship was designed to withstand. Metal groaned and energy conduits ruptured as gravity crushed the vessel like an invisible fist. "Glorious victory, respond!" Zekthor called into his communicator. "Static," answered him. On the display, the proud dreadnought continued to collapse until it simply ceased to exist. 3,000 crew members and the most advanced warship in the hegemony fleet had been reduced to a sphere of compressed matter no larger than a basketball. "Sir," Admiral Thexara whispered, "the eternal justice and divine wrath are also caught in gravitational fields." Zekthor watched in horror as 2 more dreadnoughts suffered the same fate. Ships that had maintained Council power for 1,000 years were crushed out of existence in seconds. The human vessels responsible floated serenely nearby, untouchable and deadly. "All ships retreat," Zekthor ordered. "Maximum speed, fall back to defensive positions." "Sir, the human ships are pursuing. They're not accelerating, they're just appearing in new positions. How is that possible?" "I don't know, sir. Our science cannot explain what we're seeing. More gravitational weapons activated." The space around Zekthor's fleet became a maze of crushing forces and twisted space-time. Ships that had ruled the galaxy found themselves helpless against weapons that shouldn't exist. President Santos appeared on the communication screen again. Her expression remained calm, almost sympathetic. "Ambassador Zekthor, I hope this demonstration has been educational. Humanity possesses technology your species cannot detect, understand, or counter. Our ships exist partially outside normal space-time. Your weapons cannot harm us. Our weapons can unmake your vessels at the molecular level." Zekthor stared at her image. "What are you?" "We're humans," Santos replied simply. "And we're tired of being told we're inferior by beings who stopped learning new things thousands of years ago. This is impossible. No species has ever developed such technology. No species ever tried. You all became comfortable with conventional physics and energy manipulation. We decided to investigate the 95% of the universe you can't see." On the tactical display, 3 more Council ships vanished into gravitational singularities. The remaining fleet was in full retreat, but the human ships followed them effortlessly. "What do you want?" Zekthor asked. "We want you to leave our space and never return with threats," Santos replied. "We want the Council to understand that humanity will not be conquered, enslaved, or intimidated. And we want you to take a message back to your masters." "What message?" Santos leaned forward, and for the first time Zekthor saw steel in her eyes. "Tell them that humans have just changed the rules of the game. The age of Council dominance is over." The transmission ended, leaving Zekthor alone with his shattered fleet and the impossible reality of human power. High Counselor Nexathara of the Ancient Assembly stared at the emergency reports flooding her crystalline display screens. Each report brought worse news than the last. The impossible had happened. A species barely 50 years old had humiliated the greatest military force in galactic history. The council chamber buzzed with panicked voices speaking in a dozen different languages. Representatives from 12 ancient civilizations argued, blamed, and demanded explanations that no one could provide. The carefully maintained order of 3 millennia was crumbling in real time. "Order!" Nexthara commanded, her telepathic voice cutting through the chaos. "We will address this crisis systematically." The chamber fell silent. Holographic displays showed the aftermath of humanity's demonstration. 7 Council dreadnoughts destroyed in minutes, the remaining fleet in full retreat, and human ships that could apparently ignore the laws of physics itself. Ambassador Zekthor's battered flagship had reached the nearest Council station 12 hours ago. His report read like science fiction, full of impossible claims about ships that existed in multiple dimensions and weapons that controlled gravity itself. "Ambassador Zekthor," Nexthara called, "please repeat your observations for the full Council." The reptilian hegemony commander stood, his usual arrogance replaced by obvious fear. "High Counselor, the human vessels demonstrated capabilities beyond our understanding. They appeared inside our formation without being detected. Our weapons passed through them harmlessly. They destroyed our ships using controlled gravitational fields." Scientist Prime Velkarath of the Eternal Dominion raised one of his 4 arms. "Impossible. Gravitational manipulation requires massive energy expenditure. No ship could generate the power needed for such weapons." "Yet 7 of our dreadnoughts are gone," Zekthor replied, "crushed into singularities and scattered across space." The chamber erupted in arguments again. Some demanded immediate retaliation with the full Council fleet. Others called for negotiation. A few suggested that humanity had somehow allied with an unknown alien power. Supreme Admiral Kethvar of the War Coalition slammed his mechanical fist on his podium. "Enough speculation. We have 20,000 ships in the core fleets. Whatever tricks these humans possess, they cannot stand against our full might. Can they not?" asked a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. All eyes turned to Elder Zixtara of the Observers, the oldest and arguably wisest member of the Council. The ancient being rarely spoke, but when she did, others listened. "Elder Zixtara," Nexthara said respectfully, "please share your thoughts." The elder's form was so old that her original species was forgotten. She existed now as pure energy within a containment field, her consciousness spanning eons. "I have seen many species rise and fall," Zixtara said. "I was present when the Council was formed to prevent wars that could destroy the galaxy. But I have never seen technology like what these humans demonstrated." She paused, her energy field flickering with what might have been concern. "More troubling is how they achieved it. Every species we have encountered follows the same technological path. Energy manipulation, matter conversion, dimensional barriers. But humans chose a different path entirely." "What do you mean?" asked Science Minister Kolthek. "They chose to manipulate the foundation of reality itself, dark matter. The invisible scaffolding that holds the universe together. We dismissed it as unimportant because we could not interact with it easily. They saw it as the key to everything." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just built better weapons. They had fundamentally changed the nature of warfare itself. Admiral Kethvar was the first to speak. "Even so, they have only 12 ships. Our intelligence confirms this. 12 vessels cannot defeat 20,000. "Can they not?" Elder Zixtara repeated. "How do you fight an enemy that exists partially outside reality? How do you destroy? Ships that can appear anywhere instantly? How do you protect your vessels from weapons that ignore shields and armor?" Uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. These were questions none of them could answer. Ambassador Ytholan of the Trade Federation stood up. "Perhaps we should consider their terms. They have not demanded surrender or tribute. They simply want us to leave them alone." "Unacceptable," roared Admiral Kethvar. "The Council does not negotiate with primitives." These primitives just destroyed 7 dreadnoughts without taking a single casualty, Ytholan pointed out. Perhaps we should reconsider who is primitive. The argument that followed was fierce but brief. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy. News of humanity's demonstration had spread like wildfire through the communication networks. The response was immediate and devastating to Council authority. "High Counselor," called Communications Director Fex Nara. "We're receiving reports from 73 systems. Local governments are declaring independence from Council authority. They're demanding protection from human forces." Nexthera felt her world shifting. "How many ship defections?" "Over 400 vessels have broken away from Council fleets. They're requesting asylum in human space." The chamber erupted again. 400 ships represented entire sector fleets. The careful balance of power that had maintained peace was collapsing as fear of human technology spread. Furthermore, Fexnara continued, the Outer Rim territories are forming a defensive alliance. They're offering trade agreements to humanity in exchange for protection against Council retaliation. Admiral Kethvar's face darkened. "This is rebellion. We must crush these uprisings immediately." "With what?" asked Elder Zixtara. "Half our fleet is in retreat from 12 human ships. The other half is scattered across the galaxy, dealing with local rebellions. And every day, more worlds declare independence." She was right. The reports continued to flood in. Systems that had been loyal Council members for centuries were suddenly questioning why they needed to obey ancient aliens when humans offered partnership instead of domination. "The situation is worse than defections," Fexnara added. "Intelligence reports indicate that humans are mass-producing their dark matter vessels. Construction facilities throughout their solar system are building dozens of new ships." Nexathara absorbed this information with growing dread. 12 ships had been enough to shatter Council confidence. What would hundreds of such vessels do to galactic stability? "How long before their new fleet is operational?" she asked. "Estimated 6 months for 50 additional vessels. Within 2 years, they could have over 300 dark matter warships." The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. 300 ships that could appear anywhere, destroy anything, and ignore all conventional defenses. The Council's 20,000 vessels would be meaningless against such a force. Science Minister Kolthek spoke up nervously. "Perhaps we could develop countermeasures, study their technology, find weaknesses." Elder Zixtara's energy field dimmed. "How do you study technology that exists partially outside our dimension? How do you find weaknesses in weapons that manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe?" "Then what do you suggest?" Nexthera asked. "Adaptation," the Elder replied. "The galaxy has changed. Humanity has introduced capabilities that make our traditional power structures obsolete. We can either adapt to this new reality or be swept aside by it." Admiral Kethavar stood again. "The Council has maintained order for 3,000 years. We will not surrender our authority to upstart primitives." "Then you will die," Elder Zixtara said simply. "And when you do, the chaos that follows will consume the galaxy." The chamber fell silent. Outside, the reports continued to arrive. More defections, more rebellions, more systems choosing human partnership over Council domination. Nexathara realized that everything had changed. The human demonstration had done more than destroy 7 ships. It had destroyed the myth of Council. Invincibility. Once that myth was broken, their entire power structure became vulnerable. "What are our options?" she asked quietly. Elder Zixtara's response was equally quiet. "Negotiation. The humans have offered to discuss terms. Perhaps it is time we listened." "Never," Admiral Kethvar declared. But Nexathara could see the fear in his eyes. They all felt it. The galaxy had belonged to the Council for millennia. Now, suddenly, it belonged to humanity, and there was nothing they could do to change it. 6 months had passed since humanity's demonstration changed everything. Captain Marcus Torres stood on the observation deck of Freedom Station, humanity's newest orbital facility. Through the reinforced windows, he could see a sight that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. 12 ships from the former Council fleet hung motionless in space nearby. Their crews had requested asylum after their home governments tried to punish them for refusing to attack human civilians. The UES Poltergeist floated among them like a protective guardian, its dark hull a reminder of humanity's new place in the galaxy. "Captain," called Lieutenant Chen from behind him. "Admiral Santos requests your presence in Conference Room Alpha." Torres nodded and made his way through the station's corridors. Freedom Station had been built specifically for diplomatic meetings, its neutral design intended to make all species feel welcome. The irony wasn't lost on him that humans were now hosting peace talks with beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Conference Room Alpha was impressive in its simplicity. A large circular table dominated the space, surrounded by chairs designed to accommodate different alien physiologies. Holographic displays showed real-time positions of fleets throughout the galaxy. President Santos sat at the head of the table, flanked by Dr. Elena Vasquez and Admiral Sarah Chen. Across from them sat representatives from 8 of the 12 Council species. The other 4 had refused to attend, choosing instead to continue their hopeless resistance. High Counselor Nexthera of the Ancient Assembly looked tired. Her crystalline features, once radiating confident authority, now showed the strain of trying to hold together a crumbling empire. "President Santos," Nexthera said as Torres took his seat, "we have reviewed your proposals. Some of them are acceptable." Torres hid a smile. 6 months ago, the Council had demanded humanity's surrender. Now they were negotiating the terms of their own survival. "Which proposals concern you?" President Santos asked. Ambassador Zekthor, still bearing the psychological scars of his encounter with human technology, spoke up. "The dissolution of the Universal Council. Our species have maintained galactic order for 3,000 years. "Through fear and intimidation," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Your order was built on the threat of overwhelming force. That threat no longer exists." It was true. Over the past 6 months, humanity had completed 50 new dark matter warships. More importantly, they had shared defensive technology with former Council subjects, breaking the monopoly of power that had kept ancient civilizations in control. "What you call order, we call oppression," President Santos continued. "Hundreds of species forced to obey laws they had no voice in creating. Resources extracted for the benefit of Council worlds while others struggled." Elder Zixtara's energy field flickered. "What do you propose instead?" "A galactic federation," Santos replied. "Democratic representation for all species, shared technology and resources. Exploration and development instead of stagnation and control." Science Minister Kolthek leaned forward. "And if some species refuse to join this federation?" Admiral Chen answered that one. "Then they'll be left alone, as long as they don't threaten others. We're not interested in building an empire. We want partners, not subjects." Torres watched. The Council representatives processed this information. It was a radical departure from everything they understood about galactic politics. For 3 millennia, power had been concentrated in the hands of a few ancient species. The idea of sharing that power with younger civilizations was revolutionary. "There is another matter," Nexthera said carefully. "Your military expansion. Intelligence reports indicate you now have over 60 dark matter vessels." 73, actually, Admiral Chen corrected. "With more under construction. But they're not all warships. Most are exploration vessels designed to map dark matter currents throughout the galaxy. This was humanity's greatest achievement. They hadn't just built better weapons, they had opened entirely new frontiers for exploration. Dark matter currents could carry ships to distant galaxies in weeks instead of centuries. The universe had suddenly become much larger and more accessible. Some Council hardliners view this expansion as a threat Ambassador Wetholan of the Trade Federation pointed out. President Santos nodded. We're aware of Admiral Kethvar's fleet movements. 4 species have combined their remaining forces under his command, approximately 8,000 ships. The number hung in the air like a challenge. 8,000 ships was still a massive force, even against humanity's advanced technology. They believe they can overwhelm us through sheer numbers, Admiral Chen said. They're wrong. Torres had seen the tactical projections. Humanity's dark matter technology had continued to advance. Their newest ships could phase entire battle groups in and out of reality simultaneously. The idea of fighting them with conventional vessels was beyond hopeless. Admiral Kethvar refuses to accept the new reality, Elder Zixtara observed. He still believes that ancient power grants eternal authority. Then he'll learn differently, Admiral Chen replied. We've tried negotiation, we've offered generous terms, but we won't allow any species to threaten innocent worlds just because they miss the old days. Dr. Vasquez activated one of the holographic displays. It showed a star map with dozens of green dots representing human-allied systems. This is what we've accomplished in 6 months, she said. 47 former council worlds have joined our alliance. They're experiencing unprecedented prosperity through shared technology and free trade. The display changed to show industrial output, population growth, and scientific advancement. Every metric showed dramatic improvement since leaving council control. Freedom works, Vasquez continued. When species are allowed to develop according to their own choices instead of council mandates, they flourish. Nexathara studied the data carefully. And species that choose to remain independent? They're left alone, President Santos confirmed. We've had no conflicts with any world that simply wants to govern itself peacefully. The only problems had come from council hardliners who couldn't accept the loss of their power. Admiral Kethvar's coalition had attacked 3 independent worlds, trying to force them back under council authority. Each attack had been repelled by human forces. What happens when Admiral Kethvar's fleet attacks human territory directly? Ambassador Zekthor asked. Torres answered that one. The same thing that happened to your ships 6 months ago. They'll be destroyed quickly and efficiently. 8,000 ships, Ambassador, Admiral Chen added. It will take approximately 47 minutes to eliminate them all. The council representatives absorbed this information with visible discomfort. They had seen humanity's capabilities demonstrated. They knew these weren't empty threats. Perhaps, Elder Zixtara said slowly, it is time for the council to formally dissolve. The galaxy has moved beyond our ability to control it. Next, Thara looked around the table at her fellow council members. Are we all in agreement? One by one. They nodded. The Universal Council, which had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, was ending with a simple vote in a human conference room. Then let's discuss the terms of the transition, President Santos said. The negotiations continued for hours, working out details of the new Galactic Federation. Representation would be based on population and technological contribution rather than ancient conquest. Resources would be shared equitably. Exploration would be encouraged instead of restricted. As the meeting concluded, Torres looked out the conference room's windows. Human ships moved among vessels from dozens of different species, working together on projects that would have been impossible under council rule. 6 months ago, humanity had been an ignored species on the edge of known space. Now they were the catalyst for the greatest political change in galactic history. It hadn't been achieved through conquest or domination. Humanity had simply refused to accept limitations and had shared their innovations with anyone willing to work together. The result was a galaxy where cooperation replaced control and exploration replaced stagnation. Admiral Kethavar's hardliner fleet was still out there, clinging to dreams of restored council power. But Torres wasn't worried. Dark matter warships were already moving to intercept them. The age of ruling through fear was ending. The age of humanity had begun. As Torres watched the stars, he thought about the children being born on worlds throughout the galaxy. They would grow up in a universe where species worked together instead of cowering under ancient threats. They would explore galaxies that previous generations could only dream of reaching. Humanity had kept its promise. They had changed the rules of the game, and in doing so, they had set the entire galaxy free.